So we're about 3 months away from the launch of the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. We still don't have an official release date confirmed. I think it's weird that we're in August and we still don't have a lot of details like the price. We still don't know the full specs for these consoles, but we do have an idea of what the launch is going to look like for the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. For the Series X, you have nothing. I mean, Halo Infinite was their big title, was their big launch title, and it got delayed. So if you buy the Xbox Series X at launch, you will have literally nothing to play except for old, backwards compatible titles. And for the PlayStation 5, I think the only big launch title they have is Spider-Man Miles Morales. I guess it's possible they can reveal more titles that are going to come out at launch, but I doubt it. I don't think the PS5 is going to have a really big launch. I think it's going to sell a lot, but as far as the actual games that you can play, it's going to be very dry for both consoles, especially the Series X. Even if we include all the multi-platform games, there's really not much to be offered from the AAA publishers either. We have Assassin's Creed Valhalla, possibly the next Call of Duty game, and there's really not much else, at least in 2020. A lot of the big releases like Avengers won't come out until 2021. And Cyberpunk won't even get released on next-gen consoles for at least another few months after it comes out in November. So, what do you really have to play on the next-gen consoles that you can't play on current-gen consoles? Because all the games that I listed, except for Spider-Man Miles Morales, will be playable on the old consoles, the PS4 and Xbox One. Valhalla will get released on the old consoles, Avengers is coming out on the PS4 and Xbox One. So if most of the big releases are still going to come out on the old consoles, what are you really missing out on if you don't buy the PS5 or Series X at launch? Of course, all the games I mentioned will run better, they will run at a higher resolution and a higher frame rate on the next-gen consoles and the old consoles, of course, but I don't think that's enough to spend $500, $600 on a new console. At least not yet. Because let me tell you something, I got the PS4 at launch in 2013, and for the first year and a half, I barely touched it. I still had my PS3. I was still playing on my PS3 because there weren't really any games on the PS4 that were worth playing. PS4 had a pretty dry library for the first couple years. And that's the thing with all these consoles. It takes time for the library to build up, so if you're an early adopter, you don't really benefit that much from that. Because here you are spending $500 on a new console, and you really have nothing to show for it. Because you don't have any games to play. And I'll guarantee you that most of the games that you do play on the PS5 will be PS4 backwards compatible games. Same thing with the Series X, they'll be backwards compatible games. And it's kind of like, what the hell is the point of getting a new console if you're going to mostly be playing old games on it? But that's exactly what's going to happen if you get the PS5 or Series X at launch, or even within the first year of its launch. You're not going to have anything to play, or you'll only have a handful of games to play. Definitely not enough to feel like it was a justified purchase to spend $500 on a brand new system. If you're thinking about buying a next-gen console, I highly recommend that you wait for a little bit, because you really don't have much to benefit from getting it at launch, besides bragging to your friends that you have a new console. I think backwards compatibility and cross-gen gaming, being allowed to play with friends on older consoles, I think that's going to make the transition a lot better and more worthwhile, but when you don't have actual games that make the actual console stand out above the older ones, besides frame rates and graphical improvements, no, like actual games that you cannot experience on the older consoles at all, I think that's what you need in order to justify a purchase like that. Because at the end of the day, what is a console worth if it doesn't have the games? If there's no games, what's the point of a gaming console? Every console I bought at launch, I regretted it so much. I regretted getting the PS4 at launch because I didn't really use it for the first year of having it. And I regretted getting the PS Vita at launch because I never used that thing either. It didn't really have any games worth playing for me. And there were plenty of consoles that I was planning on getting at launch, but I decided to wait for a bit, and it ended up working out great for me. I decided not to get the Wii U at launch, and I ended up never buying one because the Wii U had no games, and it just wasn't a good value. So I think good things happen to those who wait. There really is no reason to rush into a new generation of consoles when you're gonna still have support on the PS4 and Xbox One for at least a couple more years to come. Especially in this messed up economy, a lot of people aren't gonna be in the position to buy a new $500 console. It's just not gonna happen for a while. So developers are gonna focus most of their resources on where most of the players are, and most of the players are still gonna be on the old consoles for a couple more years at least, because that's where the money's going to be. Developers figure if they only release next-gen exclusives, I mean, some of them are, but a lot of them are going to wait a little while before they do that, because if they only release it on the PS5 and Series X, they're going to make a lot less in sales. And this is something that happens every generation. The transition takes a couple of years to happen, so you're better off just waiting until that transition is fully done. Why spend $500 on something that you're barely going to be able to use for at least a year? It just seems kind of pointless to me.